Your Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Wednesday, June 21st. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And also just a reminder that you could subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, or you can also follow along wherever you may be listening to your podcast, both of which are 100% for free. It won't cost you anything, and it will help me out tremendously. So please make sure to do that real quick. And also that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. All right. Good morning, everyone. As always, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your day. And to kick things off on today's show, as you all are aware by now, based on the name of today's episode, I'm going to get into my summer 2023 Chicago Blackhawks top 10 prospects list. It's one of my favorite segments that I've been doing for a couple of years now on the show. I always really enjoy breaking down the prospects. And now that the Blackhawks and general manager Kyle Davidson have accumulated a lot more prospects than we've seen in the organization in recent years, it is a lot more fun to break down lists like this. And I know a lot of the fans out there really enjoy learning more and reading up and listening about some of the most hyped up players that they've drafted and how everyone's doing and all that good stuff. So I think it's a fun type of segment and series, whatever you may call it, to do here on the show. And I will be starting today with my honorable mentions. I think this is going to be a 3-episode series. I'm going to be doing all the honorable mentions here today. And then I think I'm going to be doing numbers 5 through 10 in one episode, and then wrapping things up with, or maybe I'll do 6 through 10 on one episode, and then numbers 1 through 5 to kind of put a bow on all of that stuff. But yeah, really excited to get into this. One thing I do want to make sure to preface, though, is, look, a lot of these guys, especially with how many prospects the Blackhawks have added to their system in the last couple of years, right? Like, most of these guys haven't even played a single game at the professional level. They're still 18, 19, 20 years old. And really, when I'm breaking down players in a certain order, I'm kind of splitting hairs here, right? Like, a guy who's ranked at number 16 could be, really close to the guy who's number 12. And you may feel differently than my rankings and where I kind of sort everyone out at. That's going to happen. People are going to have different opinions. There's no end all be all of a top 10 or top 20 prospect list. People are going to have different things in different spots. So don't give me grief if you feel like I have someone ranked too low or too high or whatever it may be. You got to take everything here with a grain of salt, because again, most of these kids have never even played a game at the professional level. So just one thing I wanted to put out there before sort of getting into all of this. But as I mentioned, I'm going to be doing all the honorable mentions here on the show today. And with the Blackhawks now having a deeper prospect pool than they've had in quite some time, I am going to be getting into quite a few players here on the show today, because there are a lot of worthy prospects that are deserving of being honorable mentions. I remember when I first started doing this segment in 2021, 2022, the top 10 was really all the Blackhawks had, right? Like, one of the thinnest prospect pools in the entire league. And it makes it a lot more fun now that they do have a deeper prospect pool. And just for the sake of making things a little bit more entertaining, I will be ranking these players 20 through 10. I'll also shout out a couple of other players that I think are worthy of keeping an eye on these next few years as well. But yeah, again, someone ranked at 17 and 13, they could be really close, and there's probably not all that much of a difference there. It's just kind of where I ended up leaning at the end of the day. So without any further ado, is that correct? I don't even know. But let's go ahead and get into all of the honorable mentions that I have. Starting at number 20, I have forward Paul Ludwinski, was a second-round pick for the Blackhawks in the 2022 NHL draft. They selected him 39th overall. They accumulated that pick from the Ottawa Senators as part of the Alex DeBrincat trade, along with the 7th overall pick that wound up turning into defenseman Kevin Korchinski, who I'll talk about probably not surprisingly in the third and final episode, because he's going to be right there at the top. Not much of a spoiler alert, I don't think, to anyone. But Lewinsky, second round pick for the Hawks in 2022, 5'11", 187-pound forward, plays with a good edge, finishes his checks, a good skater. Tallied 34 points this past season in 47 games for the Kingston Frontenacs of the OHL. A little bit of a down year offensively for Ludwinski, considering he had 43 points in 67 games during his draft year, 16 goals and 27 assists. So to see him only have 34 points this year was a little bit discouraging, and why he kind of fell towards the bottom a little bit here in my honorable mentions rankings. But again, I still think Paul Ludwinski could have a high future because of the energy and the motor that he plays with. He also dealt with some injuries this past season, a couple of different ones that kept him out of the lineup. So hopefully Ludwinski will be able to bounce back for Kingston next year. He is going to be back at the junior level, and he was actually named the captain of the Kingston Frontenacs once they traded high-end prospect Shane Wright at the trade deadline. So hopefully Paulie Ludwinski, a perfect Chicago Blackhawks name that, if he reaches the NHL level, I think a lot of fans in Chicago would enjoy what he provides. He was a lot of fun to watch at the development camp. So hopefully he's able to bounce back for a big year in Kingston. I have Paul Ludwinski at number 20 here. Then at number 19, I have Jalen Luypen, who's kind of a surprising name in the Blackhawks prospect pool because he was a 7th round pick back in 2021. Has played 5 years of junior hockey out in the WHL, but has put up some pretty good numbers these last 2 seasons and plays a game that a lot of folks think will translate to the NHL level. He's 5'10", only 155 pounds. He's certainly going to have to get stronger, but he's a good skater. He plays hard on the puck, is effective on the forecheck, does all the little things right, and also offensively has displayed his skills the last couple of seasons as well. He tallied 39 points in 38 games with the Tri-City Americans this past season, his new team. Like Ludwinski, he also missed some time at the beginning of the season while he was recovering from an injury. Spent his first 4 years in the WHL playing for the Edmonton Oil Kings, and in his last year there, they were an absolute juggernaut. He was a point-per-game player there, down on their third line. So I think Jalen Luypen is a very interesting prospect to keep an eye on. He's certainly going to have to add some weight, but he is going to be at the professional level next season with Rockford. He actually signed his entry-level contract last summer, wound up playing for Tri-City in the WHL, but once their season ended, he joined Rockford for their playoff run and wound up making his AHL debut, playing in 3 postseason games. So keep an eye on Jalen Luypen down in the Rockford Ice Hogs, in Rockford with the Ice Hogs this upcoming season. Then at number 18, I have a very intriguing prospect in Samuel Savoy, a 3rd-round pick in 2022, was the 81st overall selection, one of 4 third-round picks that the Blackhawks made, I believe. 5'10", 189 pounds, but is as gritty as they come. And if he's able to make it to the NHL level, Blackhawks fans are going to love this kid. He plays with a huge edge. He's honestly been kind of compared to Andrew Shaw because of his away from the puck antics, loves to throw his weight around, loves to be gritty and grind it up. And he also had a very impressive season with the Gatineau Olympiques of the QMJHL this past season, tallying 59 points in 60 games. And he was actually well over a point per game early on in the year. He went on like a 17-game point streak in which he was just on an absolute heater there for a while. Cool off a little bit at the end of the season, but still a very solid season for Samuel Savoy and a really impressive year considering the offensive numbers he put up. That really wasn't the reason that the Blackhawks drafted him. It was because of the edge that he plays with and what he's able to provide away from the puck. But if he's able to contribute offensively, he's never going to be a point per game player, I don't think, at the professional level. But if he can chip in that department and kind of round out his game with some offense, I really do like his chances of reaching the NHL level. Also added 8 points in 13 postseason games with Gatineau. And as I mentioned, a really big uptick offensively because he only had 33 points in 64 games the year prior, 18 goals and 15 assists, got that up to 26 goals, and also had 18 more assists, was a little bit more involved as a playmaker as well. So super excited for Samuel Savoy. He is going back to Gatineau for another season, 19 years old, someone to keep an eye on these next few years. Probably going to be his last year in junior hockey, I would have to guess. Then at number 17, I have Ilya Safonov, a 6th-round pick in 2021, who's kind of been a little bit of a secret and hasn't really been talked about much since joining the Blackhawks organization a few years ago. But I'll tell you what, this kid has put up some really impressive numbers playing over in the KHL, which is widely considered to be the second best league in the entire world at just 20 and 21 years of age. He's also got some good size to him, 6'3", 205 pounds, left-handed shot, 37 points in 64 KHL games at just 21 years old this past season, 19 goals and 18 assists, also added 6 points in 24 postseason games. Just his third year at the KHL level, and already, I guess I shouldn't have said already, or just his third year, already his third year of KHL action, 3 years of pro hockey under his belt, just turned 22 at the end of the season. He does still have 2 years left on his contract over in Russia, but he recently just spoke out about how his dream is to make it to the NHL. So I know we hear that a lot with Russian prospects, and you always got to kind of keep an eye out and got to consider whether they are actually going to come over. But from all accounts, sounds like Ilya Safonov is going to do so. And look, getting that experience at a young age, there's something to be said about that. And he's going to continue to play at that level the next 2 years until he rounds out his contract. So for being a 6th-round pick, he's really ascended in the prospect pool these last few years a little bit quietly, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more about these kids these next few years until he hopefully comes over to North America and joins the Blackhawks. I got Ilya Safonov at number 17 on my honorable mentions top 10 prospects list. All right, folks, I'm going to continue this list here in just a moment, but real quick, I got to talk to you all about eBay Motors. Let me pull up the overlay here. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. And it's the same thing when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time that you need accessories and parts, make sure to head over to eBay Motors, because with eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to the My Garage feature and look for the green check mark to know your part will fit, or else you'll get your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right prices, and the right fit on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Real quick, before I pick up where I left off, I do want to let all of you know out there that I'm currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And if you're still watching at this point in the video, first, let me say thank you very much. And second, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to go and smash that subscribe button real quick. We got a lot of good Blackhawks stuff here on the show, a lot of big stuff coming up. Obviously, we're 7 days away from selecting Connor Bedard with the first overall pick. Free agency is going to follow. I'm getting into my top 10 prospects list. I'm breaking down numerous draft profiles. Lots of good stuff that you're not going to want to miss. So make sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks if you haven't done so already. I greatly appreciate all of your support. All right, picking up where I left off on my honorable mentions, my top 20. I usually don't do top 20s because in recent years, the Blackhawks really hadn't had 20 prospects until Kyle Davidson took over, of course. Last year was a little bit of a change of things. But when I first started this list, there really wasn't 20 worthy prospects to get into. But it's nice that things certainly have changed these last few years. So continuing where I left off in my top 20 here, I left off with Ilya Safonov, 6th-round pick in 2021. Coming in at number 16, I have none other than Sam Rinzel, 1st-round pick for the Blackhawks in 2022, 25th overall selection. Of course, they made that trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs to take on Peter Mrazek's salary for the next 2 years in order to get back into the first round. And Rinzel was the player they wound up selecting. And I quite honestly think with the slew of picks that the Blackhawks have in the second round of this year's draft and all the cap space they still have, they have to reach the salary cap floor. I really do expect them to make a trade back into the first round or to trade up from number 19. One or the other seems very likely for this Blackhawks squad in the next 7 days. And I expect them to take a player similar to Sam Rinzel. And there may be some of you out there who are saying, well, this kid was a first round pick last year and he's all the way down at number 16. Was this really a good selection for the Blackhawks? They're in a position right now and at this point in time last year where they had so much draft capital and they knew they were going to be deepening their prospect pool that they could take a risk on a player like Sam Rinzel, who is at the time was a little bit of a project and still is very much a project. And that's what it's going to be for these next few years. But I think the Blackhawks are probably going to have the same mentality going into this year's draft. And I think if they are to trade back up into the first round, they're going to take a player like Sam Rinzel, who, yeah, he's probably going to take a few years, but if he does work out and does develop properly, the ceiling is really high. And there's no arguing about the ceiling that Sam Rinzel could have. He's already 6'4", 180-pound right-handed defenseman, a big boy right-handed defenseman. And for all the size the Blackhawks have added in their prospect pool recently on the back end, most of them are left-handed defensemen. So I think it was a good selection to add some size and a right-handed shot in Sam Rinzel. And he also skates like a deer. Really good skating ability. Was also one of the youngest players going into the 2022 NHL draft. For all of you who don't know, he's still only 18 years old for a few more days. He's just about to turn 19 in a couple of days here and was only 17 when the Blackhawks selected him. So he's still very far away. He's still very raw in terms of his development, but he did put up some pretty solid numbers in the USHL this past season for the Waterloo Blackhawks, 36 points in 58 games. I know that stuff might not jump off the page, but again, he is still kind of figuring things out and still is a long ways away. And the Blackhawks can afford to be patient. That's why they can make a selection like this. So it was a really solid season from Sam Rinzel. I also saw he put up really solid transition numbers and analytical numbers in the USHL as well. And he's only going to be a freshman in college next season for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers. So just a reminder to be patient with a player like Sam Rinzel. He's probably going to play at the very least 2 and likely 3, if I had to guess, years of college hockey. So we're not going to see him at the professional level for quite some time, but that's absolutely okay. The Blackhawks knew this when they selected him. I'm going to have Sam Rinzel here at number 16, but I think there's a very good chance that in a few years, he's going to be inside the top 10 and possibly even the top 5 if everything goes right. Coming in at number 15, I have Colton Dach, second round pick for the Blackhawks in 2021. He was a 62nd overall pick, so a little bit of a later second round selection, but this was obviously a very fan favorite pick for the Blackhawks, of course, when Kirby was the 3rd overall pick in 2019 and he was still around. It made sense considering they had some ties to the Dach family and also because there were a lot of things to like about Colton's game. 6'4", 196 pounds, similar to Kirby's stature, but played a much more physical and rugged game than his older brother. Also was a left-handed shot as opposed to a right-handed shot. But that kind of physicality, Kirby could play a little bit of that game, but it stood out absolutely 100% more with Colton. Unfortunately, this past season, he just suffered a slew of injuries basically everywhere he went. It started at the Blackhawks Prospect Showcase, the Tom Curvers Prospect Showcase against the Minnesota Wild, where he suffered a concussion early in that. I also suffered a concussion in the midst of the season. For the World Juniors, played 3 games and suffered a similar looking injury to what his brother Kirby had when he was the captain of Team Canada. Fortunately, wasn't as severe as Kirby's, but just a very frustrating season, I'm sure, for Colton Dach, and really wasn't on the ice all that consistently until the end of the year when he joined the Seattle Thunderbirds. But in total, he tallied 27 points, 12 goals, and 15 assists in 23 combined games for the Kelowna Rockets and the Seattle Thunderbirds. He was also the captain of the Kelowna Rockets before getting traded. Added 14 points, 3 goals, and 11 assists in 19 games for the WHL champion Seattle Thunderbirds. Just an absolute juggernaut of a squad there. As I mentioned, he got hurt at the World Juniors, which cut his performance a little bit short, but did have 1 assist in 3 games prior to the injury. The one thing I will say about Colton Dach is I think the numbers that he put up in the season prior to Kelowna got everyone a little bit too hyped about his offensive game. He had 79 points, 29 goals, and 50 assists in 61 games the year prior for Kelowna. Really a breakout type of season for him offensively. And I do think he has a really good goal scoring ability, but I don't think he's going to be a point per game player at the NHL level. I don't think his playmaking ability is really all that translatable. I love the edge that he plays with. I love the physicality that he provides, but I would say Colton Dach to me is more of a third line player with a good shot and has some worth because of the physicality and the edge that he can bring. So that's why I have Colton Dach a little bit lower here. I don't quite think he has some of the upside that maybe some of the younger prospects in the organization may still have based on the years that they had this past season. So I'm not as high on Colton Dach as some other people may be. I do think he could be a very good goal scorer. Hopefully, he'll be able to have a good first professional season next year. He is expected to join the Rockford Ice Hogs. But yeah, I have him a little bit lower than some folks do. I think the playmaking ability is a little capped, but I do still think Colton Dach is intriguing for that size and a power forward mold with a very strong shot. Excited to see what he does in Rockford next year. Then at number 14, I have his Seattle Thunderbirds teammate, Nolan Allen, first round pick for the Blackhawks in 2021, the 32nd overall pick. The Hawks got that selection from the Columbus Blue Jackets as part of the highly criticized Seth Jones trade at the time. And when the Blackhawks selected Allen with that pick, everyone was a little stunned because he had mostly gotten like late second round, early third round draft evaluations. So it was a little bit off the board pick from then GM Stan Bowman. It was actually the last first round pick that he made for the Chicago Blackhawks. Kind of an interesting one. And I personally wasn't really high on Allen even a year after they drafted him. But I will say, I think he's developed rather nicely these last couple of years. And his size is undeniable. 6'2", 200-pound left-handed defenseman, plays a defensive style, and that's always the type of player that he's going to be. But he has improved his offense the last couple of years. He had 27 points in 57 games combined for the Prince Albert Raiders and the Seattle Thunderbirds this past season. 11 goals for Nolan Allen this past year. If he can, he's never going to be a playmaking defenseman, never going to be a power play guy. But with his size, if he can just add a blistering wrister and slap shot and chip in for goals on the back end and play a rugged defensive style, I think that's all we can ask for. The Blackhawks didn't draft Nolan Allen for his offense, so it's been nice to see him find ways to contribute these last couple of years, a little bit more than what he did prior to being drafted. He was also, like Colton Dach, captain for Prince Albert before getting traded. And, it's always nice to see a lot of prospects have those leadership qualities. And the Blackhawks have quite a few captains in their organization right now. Also, to go on top of the offense for Nolan Allen, he had 41 points in 65 games the year prior. That was really the first time where it was like, oh, okay, maybe he does have a little bit more offense than we've given him credit for. He also added 10 points in 19 postseason games for the WHL champion Thunderbirds, 2 goals and 8 assists. He had 2 points in 7 games for Team Canada at the U18 World Juniors, and also 2 goals in the Memorial Cup where the Thunderbirds ended up falling short, but a really good showing for Nolan Allen there. And I also thought he had a really good showing for Team Canada as kind of a shutdown guy on that roster. So I'm definitely higher on Nolan Allen, not super high like some of the other defensemen in the system right now, but I'm definitely higher than I was on him a year and a half ago. I'm hoping, he's going to be an NHLer one day. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with all these left-handed defensemen in the Blackhawks organization. But Nolan Allen, like Colton Dach, is going to be in Rockford this next season. It's going to be a big year coming up for him. We'll see. Hopefully he'll be able to keep developing well. I have Nolan Allen here at number 14. Then at number 13, we got Aiden Thompson. Third round pick for the Blackhawks, the 90th overall selection in the 2022 NHL draft, wound up going after Samuel Savoy after Gavin Hayes, but he had a really solid year for the University of Denver Pioneers, an organization or a collegiate program that the Blackhawks are quite familiar with these last few seasons. Thompson's a 5'11", 180-pound left-handed forward, 32 points in 32 games during his freshman season at the University of Denver, 10 goals and 22 assists. I call it his freshman season because he is already 21 years old. He played the last couple of seasons for the Lincoln Stars of the USHL, and the Blackhawks selected him as an overager. But I'll tell you what, I think this is a really good pick by the Blackhawks, and I'm higher on Aiden Thompson than probably most Blackhawks fans are. But when I saw this kid play at Blackhawks, what he did at the development camp, he was ahead of most of the guys at that point, and thinks the game at a really fast and really high level, makes those quick breakout passes. He does the little things exceptionally well, and I thought he got better and better as the year went on with Denver and started to take on a little bit more of a meaningful role there late in the season. So I'm super high on Aiden Thompson. I actually had him at number 10 during my midseason Blackhawks top 10 prospect rankings. It's not that I'm less high on him now. It's just been an ascension from a couple of other guys. And like I said, when we're breaking down a top 20 list here, I'm kind of splitting hairs. So I'm really high on Aiden Thompson. He's going to be back with Denver next year. I'm expecting that to be his final season of college hockey, and hopefully it's a big one for him and the Pioneers. All right, coming up in just a minute here, folks, I will continue to break down my honorable mentions for my top 10 prospects list. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Real quick, before I continue on to my final few honorable mentions, I wanted to make sure to let you all know about the giveaway that I'm having once I reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers right now. I'm closing in on 800. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? It only takes 2 seconds. It's not going to cost you any money. Helps me pay the bills over here once I do reach 1,000 subscribers. So go and help your boy out. Make sure to go and smash that subscribe button. And like I said, once I do reach 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to be having an awesome giveaway. And I actually just posted a couple of pictures on the Instagram account. If you want to go and check out some of the things that I'm going to be having in my giveaway. It's going to be an option giveaway. You'll be able to select whatever Blackhawks gear you want. And all you need to do in order to qualify, you need to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and you need to be following Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram. And when you do follow the account, make sure to just send me a DM, a screenshot of you already subscribed to the YouTube channel. That way I can make sure that you're subscribed. That's all you got to do. And once I reach 1,000 subscribers, I'll be doing a random giveaway to one lucky listener out there. So make sure to go do each of those two quick things. Make sure to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I greatly appreciate all of your help, folks. Picking up where I left off, coming in at number 12 here on my Blackhawks summer 2023 prospects list is none other than Cole Guttman, who is kind of caught the world by storm. I guess not the world by storm, but caught Blackhawks fans by storm based on the year that he just had. He was a 6th round pick for the Tampa Bay Lightning way back in 2017, but never wound up signing his entry-level contract with the club, which made him a free agent following his senior season with Denver. And the Blackhawks were the ones to scoop him up. And my, oh my, what an addition this could turn out to be, because Guttman was awesome in his first year in the organization. A 5'9", 170-pound right-handed shot. He came off of a very solid senior season with the University of Denver, where he captained them to the national championships, had 45 points, 19 goals, and 26 assists in 41 games that season. Wound up making his NHL debut with the Blackhawks this year and had 6 points in his first 14 games, 4 goals, and 2 assists before unfortunately suffering a season-ending injury, which cost him an opportunity to play for the Ice Hogs in the Calder Cup playoffs as well. But prior to his first NHL call-up, he was doing some really solid things down in Rockford. He had 30 points in his first 39 career AHL games, 16 goals and 14 assists. Also was one of the biggest standouts during Blackhawks development camp and at the Tom Curver's Prospect Showcase. But I don't think anyone quite expected Guttman to break out this way. And it's kind of why a guy like Aiden Thompson, Colton Dach have fallen down the rankings a couple of spots because of the breakout year that Cole Guttman just had. He was absolutely fantastic. And I'll tell you what, I think we saw enough in that 14-game stretch. If all goes well for him here in the offseason, I expect him to be a bottom six piece in the Blackhawks lineup during their season opener. So super excited for what Cole Guttman has in store for the future. He is already 24 years old, so I think he's actually the oldest player here on this list, and maybe you don't quite consider him a prospect at this point in time. But based on he's only had 1 year of professional hockey under his belt, I'm going to consider him a prospect. But I'm excited to see Cole Guttman, and I don't think that I'm the only one excited to see what this kid has in store for the Blackhawks next season. Coming in at number 11 now, my last honorable mentions before I get into my top 10 is goaltender Arvid Soderblom, who was an undrafted goaltender that signed with the Blackhawks back in the summer of 2021. 6'3", 180 pounds out of Sweden. He was one of the most sought after free agent goaltenders from over in Europe during the summer of 2021. And it was pretty notable when the Blackhawks signed him. But I also kind of like Cole Guttman. I don't think anyone expected Arvid Soderblom to have the first year that he did over in North America. He went 21, 15, and 2 with a 2.76 goals against average, 919 save percentage, and 2 shutouts in his first 38 professional games over in North America. Was huge for the Rockford IceHogs all throughout the season. One of the youngest teams in the AHL. He was co-MVPs with Lucas Reichel for good reason, and was also phenomenal for them in the 2022 Calder Cup playoffs. Unfortunately, he had a little bit of a struggle this past year, and that's kind of why I think for the first time since he had his breakout year last year, where he's fallen out of my top 10. But there were some things that really didn't work in his favor, right? He was up and down, especially in the first half. Really didn't get settled. I thought he did play a little bit better when he rejoined Rockford and kind of got comfortable there at the end of the season. But it was a little bit of a disappointing year for Arvid Soderblom. In Rockford, he put up a 15, 12, and 5 record with a 292 goals against average and 905 save percentage and 33 starts. So all of the numbers across the board took a little bit of a dip. He also didn't even have a single shutout in those 33 games for the IceHogs. And then when he was called up for the Blackhawks, I do think he was better than these numbers suggest, but still not the prettiest regardless. 210-2 with a 3.45 GAA and 894 save percentage. Didn't get much help from his defense at that point in time, but all across the board, probably not the step in the right direction we wanted to see Arvid Soderblom take. But the Blackhawks, I know, are still pretty high on this kid, and the expectation is that he's going to be the backup to Peter Mrazek next season. So hopefully Soderblom settled into that spot as the backup can be a little bit more comfortable and provide a little bit more consistency. I'm still high on him. I still have him at number 11, but make no mistake about it, it's going to be a very big year for him next year behind Mrazek in Chicago. I'm going to give a couple of more shout outs here because, like I said, it's fun that the Blackhawks prospect pool is deeper than it's been for really the last decade and a half. I think that's pretty fair to say. So there are a couple of other guys that I think are worthy of a shout out. The first one is Dominic James, 6th round pick for the Blackhawks in 2022. He had 28 points in 35 games for the University of Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs this past season as a sophomore. That's another collegiate program that the Blackhawks have gotten very comfortable with in the last handful of years. He also played for Team USA at the U20 World Juniors, which I thought was a pretty cool nomination for him to see him make that team. Had 1 assist there in 5 games, but did make an impact as a good center iceman and is known for being a really good skater. Both of those things I think are going to help him have a chance to reach the NHL level. And for being a 6th round pick in this last year's draft, I think that this could turn out to be a good selection for the Blackhawks. So we'll see how James continues to develop these next few years. He's going back to UMD here in the fall to be a junior, and he'll turn 21 years old here in July. Someone to keep an eye on in college hockey. Another guy to keep an eye on in college hockey is Landon Slaggert, a 3rd round pick, the 79th overall selection, 2 picks ahead of Wyatt Kaiser, by the way, in the 2020 NHL draft. He did only have 13 points in 35 games during his junior year with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish this past season. 7 goals and 6 assists, a very big struggle for Landon Slaggert this past season, which is a little bit interesting. And so was his decision to return to college hockey, to be a senior and join his brother at the University of Notre Dame rather than to sign his entry-level contract and go pro. Apparently there isn't any dispute or anything going on between the two sides, but it's going to be interesting to see if Slaggert does wind up signing his ELC or if he elects to become a free agent after his senior year of college. But he has taken a little bit of a step back offensively these last 2 years after being nearly a point per game guy for the Fighting Irish as a freshman. But he does play a tenacious game, good on the forecheck, has some size. Those things may give him an opportunity, but I would like to see more out of Slaggert offensively in his final year with the Fighting Irish. I also want to give Jackson Stauber a shout out. He was an undrafted free agent goaltender out of Providence, 6'3", 175 pounds, put up some really solid numbers in his senior year there. Went 21-14-2 with a 2.10 goals against average, 921 save percentage, and 4 shutouts in 37 games during his senior season. Really solid. Had his first year of professional hockey this past year. Wasn't the best with the Rockford Ice Hogs. He was 6-8 with a 3.32 GAA and 894 save percentage. But due to injuries, the Blackhawks had to call him up, and he was actually awesome. He went 5-1, 2.81 GAA, and a 911 save percentage. Very curious to see that he struggled pretty largely at the AHL level, but went 5-1 in 6 games with the Blackhawks in the NHL. I will say, let's probably hold our horses here a little bit on Jackson Stauber, but it is nice to have another, solid goaltender here in the organization. The expectation is that he's going to be the starter for the Rockford Ice Hogs next year and part of that tandem along with Drew Commesso. Stauber is already 24 years old, though, so it is kind of now I won't want to say a make or break season, but it's a big one and should tell us a little bit more about whether he's going to be an NHL level goaltender or what's going to happen. But I do think Jackson Stauber is another guy to kind of keep an eye out for. And then last but not least, I got Ryder Rolston, who is a guest of the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. I was very grateful to interview Ryder recently. I thought he was an awesome interview. Make sure to go and check that out on my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Ryder was an awesome guy. Is an awesome guy. I shouldn't say was. He's still an awesome guy, but he was a 5th round selection for the Colorado Avalanche back in 2020, but was traded to the Chicago Blackhawks as part of the Carl Soderberg trade a few years ago. Do all you Blackhawks fans remember him and remember when the Blackhawks randomly had Carl Soderberg and, oh my gosh, Matthias Janmark. There were a lot of just random names that they had for a couple of seasons there. But Rolston has made some interesting headwaves over the last few years. He had 20 points in 27 games for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. He was teammates with Landon Slaggert these last 3 years before, unfortunately, having a season-ending injury that cut his season short. But he did wind up signing his ELC once Notre Dame's season concluded, but wasn't quite healthy enough to make his professional debut. But that is expected to happen here in the fall. He's going to be an interesting forward to watch for the Ice Hogs. Provides a lot of speed. I've also been impressed with what I've seen out of his wrist shot. Those two things, I think, are what give him a good chance of being a bottom 6 guy possibly for the Blackhawks in these next few years. So going to be interesting to watch all of these prospects over the next season or two. And like I said, I am splitting hairs here a little bit with some of these guys in the rankings. Maybe you feel one guy should be higher, or maybe one of these shout outs should be in there somewhere. But either way, for the first time in quite a while, the Blackhawks have 25 prospects that are worth talking about. Dominic James, Landon Slaggert, Jackson Stauber, even Ryder Rolston. I really do think those guys have a shot to be at the NHL level, and most of them were later round selections or undrafted players for the Blackhawks or for another squad. So it's quite a fun time for the Chicago Blackhawks, obviously with the first overall selection and Connor Bedard, but having this deep of a prospect pool, and when Bedard does join them, arguably the best prospect pool in the entire NHL. I really enjoy talking about a lot of these prospects. I really enjoy keeping up with them throughout their respected seasons. And I'm certainly excited to get into the first part of my top 10 on the next episode of Locked On Blackhawks. But I think that's going to wrap up Wednesday, June 21st episode of the show here. As always, thank you again for tuning into the show, and make sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be getting your podcasts. And also make sure to go and smash that subscribe button for me. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Once I do reach that number, I'm going to be having an awesome giveaway. I love giving away free Blackhawk stuff. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, it's going to do it. Peace out.